Hey there, welcome to another training session on Decisions version 8. In this session, we will learn about dashboards and tiles. We would cover how to create a page, and we will understand how does the layout of a page designer looks like. We will look at how to add CSS. We will see how we can add controls on our page. We will add a report and see how we can configure a report. We'll add simple tiles and also diagram tiles. And at the end, we will look at how we can control the permission for the dashboard which we have. So we'll start by understanding what a dashboard is. So it's basically a page that displays and organizes data that can be analyzed easily by the end customer. Now, there are a couple of things that we create a dashboard that can be to capture the data, what we are trying to measure. We can use the dashboard for visualizing in a way, what do we need to see in the data so we can take some quick decisions. And then we interpret that data. And there are multiple reasons why one would need to use a dashboard. One simple one can be to have a landing page where we can direct the users to come, and that becomes their start of the journey of any application or workflow. We can have a process view that can depict at which stage of the process an application or a process is. And we can also look at what kind of data we have stored, and we can take some actions from our dashboard. These are some of the examples of how a dashboard can look like in Decisions. First one indicates how we can have a landing page that kind of have different options the user can click on and perform some actions. This here depicts how we can have tiles in Decisions dashboard to represent some KPI, and how we can add report on that so we have all the information at one place. In Decisions, we have two different kinds of tiles, and we use tiles to represent some numeric or some information that can be used to take some quick decisions. And now there are two types. One is simple tile, and there are some attributes about simple tile. We can use that to navigate between the pages. We can add CSS to make it look like the way we want as per the branding. These are some of the examples of how a tile, a simple tile, may look like. It'll have the string which tells what this tile represents. And we can have a number that represents some information for the end user. And the second type of tile is the diagram tiles, in which we can add images, we can add charts. Basically, we can create any diagram and then represent it as a tile that has some information to convey. When we talk about simple tiles, in dashboards, we just have to drag and drop that control, and then we can configure that depending on what is that we would want our tile to display. Similarly, for diagram tiles also, we have a control which can be dragged and dropped onto the page, and then we can configure that control in order to display information using diagram tiles. In diagram tiles, we get a flow that we can use to kind of tell the tile what is the information that I want to display on the tile. And this can be a dynamic number or a value coming from a flow. And this is something which we'll be working on, and we'll have a demonstration of how we can create a diagram tile flow. So what we will do in this session is go step by step in understanding what dashboard is, what page is in Decisions, and how we can create that. We'll add some of the components that can go on a dashboard, for example, the reports and also the tiles that represent some information. And then we will try to see how we can control the permissioning on a particular dashboard or page. So now I'll switch screens and go inside Decisions version 8. And we're going to go inside the folder which we will use to create our dashboard. So to start with, we'll go to this option, Create Report. And inside that, on the left, we will see there's an option called Page/Dashboard. You're going to click on Page, and we'll give our page a name. And we're going to call it Applicant Loan Request Page. And we go ahead and hit Create. So in this page, our idea would be to display a report that has records about the applicant's loan requests, and we'll have some tiles to kind of take a quick view of what's happening in the process. So this is the layout of a page when we get inside the page designer. There are a couple of things to note here. On the top, we get this action bar to save our work, to create checkpoints, and we can also view our page when we are building it. And on the left-hand side, we get this toolbox, which basically consists of all the form controls that we can use to create our page. And this white section is where we'll be building our page. Right now, you can see we get a default grid, and you can see that we have one column and we have 2 rows. Now we can change that to make it look the way we want. We can have as many rows, as many columns, and organize this page as per the design we are creating. Now we'll start by building our page. And the first thing we would need is a report. So I come to my toolbox and drag and drop this control called Report Viewer. Now what this control allows us to do is add an existing report that we have, or we can also create one, and that will be displayed here. So in our case, we're going to click on Pick or Create Default Report. And Decisions will give me 2 options. Either I can create a new report or I can pick an existing one. Because we do have a report which we can use in this example. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Pick. And I'm going to use this Applicant Loan Request Report. And I click on Pick. Now, when I do that, I have configured this control, and I can click on Preview to see how that report look like. So this is how my report would look like on the page. Now you see that we have some gray space here. We can work on to kind of make it look better. So the first thing we would do is we will expand this report to go into the second column. So we occupy the entire row here. And another thing to point out here is when we click on the report, we get to see there are some properties on the right-hand side, which we can use to configure. We can change the width. We can change the margins on the right and left. And we can also add CSS on our page. To do that, I would go to the surface, which is basically the grid on which this page is being built. And I scroll down and I can check what are the different style sheets that are added in this instance. So we can pick one of them. Let's say in this case, I go ahead and pick steel blue. And that CSS will actually get applied to the controls that I would be using or drag and dropping on this page. Now, to make sure that all the CSS gets applied to controls, what I'm going to do is on the surface, I am going to pick a CSS class called surface. This will ensure that when I'm dragging and dropping these components, these controls, the CSS gets applied to them automatically. So just to verify the CSS which we have applied, let's click on Preview. And when I do that, you can notice that our top banner has changed. The header has changed to the color of the CSS. And our report also respects the CSS which we have added. which looks neat and fine. So I close that and come back to our designer space. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save my report now, the page now, excuse me. So every time we make any change, it's always advisable to save so we do not lose our work. The next thing I'm going to do is create tiles now, as we discussed on the presentation. So I come on the search option in the toolbox and search for tile. And I'm going to drag and drop this option called simple tile. As we discussed, we have two different types of tiles, the simple tile and the diagram tile. And we'll look at both of them one by one. And we'll start by looking at the simple tile. So when I drag and drop it here, you see we have an exclamation red mark here that kind of tells us something. I can go and check what it's telling. It's saying that please select the flow. So every simple tile will have a flow associated with that. And that flow will actually send the information which this tile will display on it. To create that flow, we come to the properties section and click on pick or create flow. When I do that, we can use an existing flow if we have, or we can go ahead and create a flow for this tile. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and create the flow. And we will call it total applications tile flow. And what this flow essentially will do for us is it will capture all the applications that there are in the system and give us the total of those applications. So we can convey to the end customer who is viewing our dashboard that right now there are X number of applications in the system. So this is how the flow designer looks like to create our tile flow. On the top, we get some user actions to save, undo, redo our work. On the left, we get all these steps which we can use to get the value which we would want to display on the tile. And this is the tile step, which we would use to configure the step and add that value. So what I'm going to do is our interest is to kind of get the information, the total number of applications in the process. So I'm going to use something called fetch entity step, and I'm going to drag and drop it onto our flow. And I'm going to connect the result path to my tile step. And here in this step, what we'll do is we'll give the type name so that the step knows that what is the data structure that we want to fetch the entities from. So in this case, I'm going to start typing applicant. And you would see that we have applicant loan request type name available. I'm going to select that. So as soon as I do that, the error mark disappears and we are good to configure this step now. So when I select this step on the right-hand side, we can see all the properties that I can use to configure our tile. The first thing I want to do is add the title for our tile. So I'm going to put that in line 1. I click on ignore and then use something called merge HTML text. And I'm going to say total applications. Now I can select that and make it bold if I want, and I'll save it. And in the next line, we would be interested in actually showing the exact value which we would want to go there. So in this case, I'll use select from flow, and we're going to get that value from our fetch entity step and select count. And then there are some more things we can do. For example, we can add a background color for our tile. So I would pick something, let's go ahead with blue. And we can add some more settings here in terms of where do we want the data to be displayed in the tile space. We would keep it center. And for the vertical alignment, we will keep it as middle. So with that, our tile is configured. Let's go ahead and save our flow. Now, before we move ahead, I always prefer to save and then click on preview so that we know how our tile looks like. So as you can see, it respects the settings which we have configured. We can see the title for the tile and also the number of applications that we have. So this becomes a very powerful way of representing data that we can have a quick look and move ahead with the decision making. So I'm going to close this preview option and look at what are the different properties that I get while working on a simple tile. As you see in the settings, I see something called part type. So I can choose it as chromeless and the title of the tile would disappear and it will look more neat and clean. So I'm going to save my work again and look at some more things that I can use. I can add CSS class to this tile as well. So in this case, I can pick something like I look for tile and I see all the classes that I can use for this particular tile. And I'm going to see something called watermarked tile and click save and preview. So you notice that now the color has changed as per our CSS. So this is how we can apply styles to our tiles in decisions page dashboards. Now what we'll do next is we'll create a diagram tile and learn how they are created and how they are different from simple tile. So I'm again going to search for the keyword tile and drag and drop a diagram tile this time. Now, when I do that, as you can see on the right side, it gives me an option to pick or create diagram tile flow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this and again, go ahead and create the diagram tile flow. And we will call it applicant loan request diagram tile. And we hit create. Now what happens is this time it takes us to the diagram tile workflow. Now this would look a little different because this is very unique to a diagram tile where we do not see all the toolbox that our flow designers usually have. We see the segregation of different options in these categories. We can add charts, we can add shapes, we can add annotations. So we're going to start by dragging and dropping a rectangle so that we can use this to create our diagram tile. Now we can change the size of this as per our requirements, as per our design that we are looking at. And the next thing I would want is a title for our diagram tile. So I'm going to use this label medium and drag and drop it onto my rectangle. And I'm going to name it total applications. And you would see that that change gets reflected here. And that's how my tile will look. So let's add some background color to our tile. To do that, I click on this pencil. And let's say this time we go ahead with something like a mustard color. And we can also add image to our tile through using this widget here. And I'm going to look for, let's say, application. And we can pick a simple icon. And it will be displayed on our diagram tile. Now, the next thing we would want is to show how many applications we have in total. So for that, again, I would use something called label and drag and drop it here. Now, this time, this information would be dynamic because it would be coming on a runtime basis and it'll keep changing. So what am I going to do is I select that particular element, scroll down, and tick on label from data. And we will get this input here, and then I'm going to click select from flow, and I'll click on add input. Now this input is what we will hold the actual information on the count of total applications. So I'm going to call it total applications count and click add. So what this diagram tile will do is it'll give us one more flow where we can actually get this information of total applications count. And that will be displayed here on runtime basis. So let me go ahead and close and save this. And when I come back into my page designer, you can see this option, edit application loan request. So I click on that. And this is the flow which we will use to kind of get this information of total applications count. And what I'm going to do now is use the fetch entity step again and connect it to our flow here. And again, we're going to give it a type name. In this case, again, it will be applicant loan request. And on the end step, we will pick the information from the output of the previous step and select count option. And we're going to go ahead and save and close on this and come back to our page designer. Now we can see that we get similar options to kind of change the look and feel of the style, where we want to position that and other options here. And we can go ahead, save our work and click on preview. So when I do that, you can see that now we have two tiles with the report, which we have added to our page. This is the simple tile and this is the diagram tile. As you can see, the diagram tile gives us some options to add the image, change the color. So basically you can draw your imaginations in diagram tile. So I'm going to hit close here and come back to our designer. And want to point out on one more thing here. All these elements on the pages actually respect the time range of the information that's coming on this page. So for example, if there were some applications which came in last month, last quarter, we can actually make our tiles and other controls to display that information in a time fashion. So to do that, I just click on this respect date range filter on page and go ahead and save it. Now what we'll do is, because we have our page built, what we'll do is we will add it to a folder and expose this as a dashboard to the end user. So page is a component that kind of holds all the controls and all the design part of a dashboard. And this folder is what will actually hold that page for us. So the users can come in and view that page. Now you would note that this is a normal folder and not a designer folder. As you can see in the designer folders, we get this pencil, but this represents a normal folder which can hold some information. It can be files or it can hold a page which we have just created. So we'll click on these three dots, go to manage, go to page and dashboard, and then we'll click on add page dashboard. And we'll pick the page which we have just created and click on save. So we'll note that when I click back on that dashboard, we can actually see the page which we just built as a dashboard. It looks neat and clean. We have the simple tile, we have the diagram tile, and we have our report. And that's how a dashboard is created in Decisions. Now, there are a couple of more things I want to point out here. And one of the main things is how we can add permissions to this particular dashboard. So not all users would have the view of this dashboard and can access. We can limit that. So to do that, I come on this dashboard, go to manage, and then click on manage permissions. So Decision will ask me what are the different accounts that I want to add or the groups that I want to add. I can go ahead and click add and pick the account. Let's say in this case, I want to give some rights to myself. And I can choose what permissions do I want to give to this user. I can let them use, open, view, edit, or maybe add. I can say OK and save permissions. So with that, what happens is only this user would have those access levels which I have just assigned. So this session was basically to kind of take you through what Page is in Decisions and how Page becomes the dashboards so that the end users can come in, look at the data, and take some quick decisions in their day-to-day work. With that, I'll close the session and we'll meet again in the next video. Thank you.